It's a clean slate. Let's get started. Few days since I shot that opening clip there, but I have made a little bit of progress with the conversion so far, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that in this video and then hopefully be able to keep building out the van. The weather really has not been cooperating. I don't think the sun has come out since the day that I got back from New England almost 2 weeks ago. Like, there's not been a single day of sunshine. Like, I have not seen the sun. It's been cloudy, rainy, and hot and humid for a while, and then it's been rainy and cold and I guess humid also. It's just been really uncomfortable. It was like 30 degrees yesterday. Before that, the day before that, it was the same thing. So not ideal conditions to be building out a van. Also not particularly good for my solar system. 14 straight days of cloudiness has prevented the fridge from running on the house battery. Fortunately, I do have the Kodiak though, so I was able to plug into the Kodiak and keep the fridge going constantly and just kind of alternate between the two, but that's been a fun thing to deal with as well. When the time comes to install solar on the NV here, I think I am going to try to increase the amount that I have. 100 watts is what I have on the Element right now, and normally that's totally fine as long as the sun comes out like once every 2 or 3 days, but when you get these long stretches like this, it's a pain to deal with, and it happens pretty frequently with the shorter days in the winter, so I'm thinking like 150, maybe even 200 watts on the NV is how I'm going to go when that time comes. So the first step in the van build was getting the floor installed, and that's pretty much all that I've done to this point as I'm shooting this video. But what I did is I put the floor in. It took about 2 days or so. It was actually quite a bit faster than I thought it was going to take, maybe 6 hours total labor. It really wasn't so bad. And the first thing that I did is I obviously removed the NV200 floor that was already in there. It's just this floor mat with this sound deadening material underneath it. I talked about it a little bit in the last video, so I pulled that out, and it was actually kind of nice because I was able to use it as a template for my subfloor and for the insulation that I used underneath the subfloor. So I decided to go with an XPS, the pink foam insulation that you can get, a 1/2-inch piece of that. Actually, I had 2 pieces of it, and then I put it down and I traced all the way around all the edges, and then I was able to cut it out with a box cutter and then obviously tinker with it and play with the cuts a little bit so that it fit perfectly inside the NV here, and it worked out really well. It seemed to fit really well, and then I used a 3M90 adhesive, a spray adhesive, to spray it down to the metal floor, mostly just because I knew that the foam was going to really work well with that adhesive to stick to the floor, as opposed to if I were to like just glue wood to it directly. I didn't really choose to use insulation for the insulating purposes. It was more for sound deadening, more just to have a little bit more something on the floor. My plan is to actually screw in my furniture to the subfloor, and this kind of gets to my next point here. I chose to use 1/2-inch plywood for the subfloor, and I know that that's a lot. A lot of people will say, you know, you only need 3/8 inch or a 1/4 inch. You might not even need too much plywood for a subfloor if you're doing it the right way. Probably could have got away without it, but I want to actually bolt my furniture that I have, my bed and the shelving system that I build on this side here. I want to be able to bolt it into the floor itself. So I decided to go with 1/2-inch plywood for that reason. That was not the best idea. Fits like a glove. And then after getting the subfloor glued on top of the foam insulation, I decided to go with a 6 foot by 9 foot, just a piece of vinyl. It looks like wood. It has like a wood look to it. I cut that out, rolled it out. It was just a roll up piece there, and then got it installed. And it was pretty easy to do that as well. I was originally going to go with like the luxury, like locking plank vinyl, but it was, I actually bought it. I had it, and I ended up returning it to Lowe's and going with this roll instead because it was a lot cheaper, and I don't know, I felt like it was going to save on weight overall. I think it actually looks a little bit better. I think it was a lot easier to do, especially to get it to cut to the wheel wells and to fit all the way around and to fit pretty snug. So decided this was the better option to go with. I saved quite a bit of money by doing it this way. I used the spray adhesive to get it to secure to the corners, and then I actually put it underneath the underneath the NV200 floor, so like the floor area in the front, there's like these little plastic screws, I guess you could say, and I took those out and I put it underneath and I secured it. I put little holes in it so that it secures down, and it just flows very seamlessly from the front, the black mat that's in the front that's just standard on the NV200s, all the way to the back. And then I did the same thing with the back plastic trim as well. So it actually, I feel like it looks kind of nice. I'm happy with how it looks, and it's going to be cheap to replace if I ever need to replace it at any point, and a lot easier to do than had I gone with the vinyl interlocking $200 plank. So I decided to, like I said, to save that money and to go that way. So floor is done. For the most part, there's a little bit of things I could do to make it a little bit better. It is bowed a little bit in the middle because I used relatively cheap plywood that wasn't perfectly straight, so I do have to kind of try to play with that. I think once I get my furniture installed, it's going to flatten it out nicely though, and it might creak a little bit and the insulation might squeak a little bit, but it's going to be very livable. I think it looks nice, so like I said, I'm pretty happy with it. So now that the floor is installed, I guess the next step is to move on to the walls. The problem is I don't really know what I want to do with the walls. I've seen a lot of these conversions, these compact cargo vans online, like NV200, ProMaster City, Transit Connect, things like that. There's tons of different ideas out there, and it seems that a lot of people just don't really do anything with the walls. They kind of just leave them the way that they are, and they put a ceiling in, they put a floor in, and then they just kind of start building their conversion. For me, obviously, my plan is to get the pop top installed on here, so I don't want to do anything too crazy with the walls and then have them have to remove it in order to access the pop top and cut off the roof and continue with that installation. I also want to make the walls match the headliner of the pop top, and I don't know exactly what that headliner is going to look like right now. So I guess I'm kind of in a position where I've decided that I think it's more important to focus on getting the furniture done and building the shelving and the bed and everything like that, making this thing so that it's livable sooner rather than later, instead of dilly-dallying on the walls, particularly because there's so many unknowns with the pop top install and how that's going to work out. I think eventually I would want to match the headliner of the pop top to the walls and use like a carpet type material to line the walls. The other question is whether or not I want to install insulation. I don't really know how necessary it is to install insulation in such a small van. If you're looking at the wall behind me here, half of it is a door, and then you also have to factor in the fact that I'm going to be driving around with a tent on the roof. So whenever I do pop the top, I don't know how much insulation is really going to impact it on the walls down here, when up there it's just a canvas, right? That basically is like just having a tent up there. So it's just, I wonder how much it really is going to matter. When it's hot weather outside, I'm definitely going to have that top popped, and if it's cold weather, then maybe having some insulation on the walls would help. But like I said, half of it is a door, and it's really difficult to get insulation into some of these like crevices. There's really not a whole lot to these walls. This is just a metal sheet behind me. It's just a thin piece of metal, so I would have to maybe install an interesting kind of like a panel almost, and then trap insulation inside. That would cause me to lose living space inside the van, a couple of inches on both sides, and that's noticeable in such a small van. And I don't know, I guess like I said, if I were keeping the ceiling the way that it is and I wasn't doing the pop top, and definitely putting insulation on the ceiling and then installing a ceiling to kind of keep the insulation in place would make a lot of sense. But because I'm going with the pop top and having a tent installed on the roof, I don't necessarily know how much putting a little bit of insulation on the walls will do for me. Maybe for the short term, what I'll do is take some of that XPS, the pink insulation that I used for the floor, I have a bunch of it left over, and use it in the windows here where the windows would have otherwise been in these cargo vans here. And then I have enough probably to make the 4 windows and fill them up. But realistically, like, that's not going to achieve too much. If I take that pink insulation and line it with something to help match the carpet or the floor, and then just kind of stick it in there, it's not going to eliminate any thermal bridges or anything like that. The only real way to insulate this van would be to fully insulate the ceiling and fully do the walls and the doors as well, and basically get insulation into every single spot that I can, so that there's really no bare metal or anything like that. And like I said, that's going to be a really difficult thing to do, and because it's such a small van, I don't know how necessary it is. I've also been living out of this Honda Element here for the past 3 years, as many of you guys know, and there's definitely no insulation on the walls in this thing. There might be a little bit on the head, like above the headliner. I've never really taken that apart, so I don't really know what's up there, but generally speaking, it's pretty much just all windows around, making it a giant greenhouse. And I've definitely survived some really hot nights, 85 plus degrees, and some really cold nights as well, where it's in the 20s and even the high teens. scenes, and I've been totally fine. So I think that the NV being only a little bit bigger than the Element will be fine without insulation, but this is a decision that I'm going to have to make another day. It's time to move on to building out the bed. By the way, thank you to those of you who have reached out to me via email expressing interest in the Element here. It is still available, and I would like to move on from it at some point within the next couple of weeks here, especially once I get the bed finished inside the NV. It's been really weird having two houses and having to manage like two different cars and all that over the past couple of weeks here, so I'm definitely ready to kind of transition over and move into the NV as soon as I can. And I don't know how well the bed is going to go. That build is going to be part of the next video. I'm trying to do something very experimental with the bed, something that I've never seen done before in a compact cargo van, so we'll see what happens. There's really not a whole lot online of people that have tried this before, so I don't really know how I'm going to be able to do it. But like I said, that'll be part of the next video. If you are interested in maybe buying the Element, feel free to send me an email, nate@elementvanlife.com, especially if you already sent me one and for some reason I didn't get back to you. Like I said, I was very overwhelmed with the amount of emails that I got, so I'm sure that I missed a couple and a couple slipped through the cracks. So feel free to send me another email, and I am planning to sell it with the entire camper conversion in there, so the bed setup, the solar system, and probably even the fridge as well if the price is right for it. So that's kind of where I am with it, and like I said, I'm hoping to move on from it pretty soon. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll talk to y'all in the next video.